So this is the opening of our regularly scheduled meeting of Norton Conservation Commission. It's Monday, February 10th, 25 at 6:30 p.m. And Dan, I have some bad news for you. Elon Musk called me and he said we keep stuff at the beginning of our meeting since it's always the same. So we will waive the reading of the preamble, which explains the legislation by which we can do these meetings remotely. And with that said, if you need to read that, it is available in the regular agenda. But we will begin the meeting with the regular volunteer members of the commission, myself, Julian Kadish. We have Dan Pearson tonight, Joe Carvalho, Tom Abest, Mark Fernandez, Lisa Carroza, Paxton Hoschel, and I think we have a full board. Yes, we do. And also participating is John Thomas, our director, and Megan Harup, our assistant. So first item of business is our meeting minutes of 1/27/2025. A relatively short meeting. Any comments? We had Dan and Lisa were absent.
Mr. Chairman, even though I was absent, I wonder if can I still make, I know I can't vote on these, but can I make observations?
I'll bet you could.
I was just going to say that in 250-XXXX, there's a sentence, the applicant stabilized the area with straw and tackifier, and straw swaddles were extended as well. I think
I got it. Yeah.
Waddles with a
the applicant was taking very good care of the site. That's all I can say.
Nah.
Yeah, we can change that.
All right, I'll fix that.
Any other comments?
There are a few, but they're, not that big a deal.
Anyone want to offer a motion to accept the minutes of January 27th as amended?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Tama, seconded, I think, by a millisecond by Mark. Roll call vote. Joe, Mark, and Tama, how do you vote?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
And I'll throw in an aye. Who did I miss? Paxton, you were there, yes?
Aye. Yeah. Aye.
Yeah, Joe, we got you. Paxton, we got you. So we have two abstentions.
Abstain. Yep.
Yeah, right. We have Lisa and Dan abstentions. All right, motion carries. And next on the agenda is the proposed water training by the fire department. It says Josh Wilson is going to be the representative. How are you, Josh?
Good. How are you?
We're good.
You guys can hear me all right?
We can.
So if you guys haven't met me before, my name's Josh Wilson. I've been on the fire department as a paramedic and firefighter since 2014. Norton's at a dive team, long time. I believe I found like archival footage from the 60s from the dive team. A few years ago, we kind of regionalized it like our other assets for firefighting. So stuff like technical rescue and hazmat. It's kind of a state regionalized team. And we joined forces with North Attleboro and eventually moved to adding Easton Fire along with Franklin Fire and soon to be Sharon Fire Department. Right now we have about 18 divers, about 4 tenders, and me being in charge of training. I was always looking for different things to train on, try to, help out the team in different ways. And one thing that was brought up by a lot of the older members of the dive team was a car on the water scenario. We have it as a fire department a couple times a year, people driving mostly into Winnicott. And typically those people are outside of the car by the time we get there. But there are some circumstances where, the person could be unconscious. The person could not be able to physically get out of their car, and the dive team response is needed in that case. And since I joined the dive team, we haven't actually been able to do any sort of training that kind of alludes to this. And this is why I kind of come to you guys, because you're kind of the first stop. Putting a car in the water is obviously, you guys, I'm sure have questions about it, and we're trying to make it kind of as safe as possible and get the okay from you guys prior to, committing to it and getting more resources put into it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just give my comments and then the rest of the people can jump in. I think our primary concern is avoiding any kind of fluids contaminating, and I'm presuming the vehicle or parts of vehicles will be absent a gas tank, absent an engine.
Yeah, it says that in the letter, I think, Julian. It says
okay.
that there.
Yeah, so I sent a proposal in, kind of the operation and all the safety aspects of, what we plan on doing. I spoke to Fogarty's about, more so, is it possible to do this? And he said, yeah, he has shells of cars. He gets them pretty frequently. These cars have no engines in it, nothing that holds fluids such as brake lines, the transmission, any sort of fuel tanks. Everything is taken out of the car. And it's essentially just a shell of a car. And that's what he said, if we're looking for, a clean car that doesn't have any fluids in it, that's the way to go with that. He's been very helpful. He says, he can help us get it in and out. That's no problem on his part. But obviously, the biggest thing is making sure that we get a car that doesn't leak anything into the water.
Yeah, and I think compared to the average bass boat, I think you guys are going to be fine. But the next question is the depth, and you're probably going to have to scout out because most of the reservoir is very shallow, and you have to scout out a spot where I don't know how far below the surface you want to put this.
Yeah, so I've dove in all of our ponds in Norton with the dive team. My original kind of request, and I know it was kind of third person through Deputy Robbins. My first request is Winnicott, because Winnicott does get deep a lot quicker than the other lakes that we have in town. And especially the part in the parking lot, kind of the back section of the Chateau parking lot, it does drop off very quickly. And that was the original idea. I believe Deputy Robbins talked to John Thomas, I think it might have been Megan. And I believe he said the reservoir would be a better option. I'm not 100% on where that was or why that was. I just know that I was only offered the reservoir. The depth issue is obviously going to be a problem with that. We do have float bags. We do have the ability to kind of float it and pull it with a boat to get the depth, but the reservoir is going to be a little bit tricky because there really are only about 3 spots that I could think of that a car will fit.
Yeah, the issue with Winnicott is that there's a lot more environmental sensitivity with Winnicott. It's within an ACEC, and it has natural heritage species within the pond. So you're better off avoiding that entirely. I know it probably has the depths you're looking for, but from an environmental nightmare, if things did go wrong, you'd be in better situation for Norton Reservoir. So that was why I suggested to Deputy Robbins that reservoir is probably the better alternative.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I didn't know the reasoning behind it, so yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, but it's my understanding that there is a spot or much of the area in front of the dam, which is quite deep. And
you're talking about the reservoir?
The reservoir now, yeah. And
yeah, there's spots up to 8 feet right around that dam, kind of near where Sailor's Lane is, kind of on that point. there's a large rock and right next to it is about an 8-foot depth.
And there is, I think we have public access going up to the dam, so that would also make it, I don't know if you can drive a vehicle. John, actually, since they did all of the revisions on the dam, is that something you can drive to or not?
I'd have to double check to see if stones were put over there, to preclude people from going off the edge there. But I'd have to double check that area.
Well, okay. Anyone else have questions, comments?
I have a few.
Go ahead, please.
Couple of quick questions. If this is a go, if we're going to be doing anything in front of the boat ramp, could we possibly close that area off? Just for safety reasons, that we don't have the public coming through a training area. And, you know, possibly maybe with a week's notification or posting to that area that would be happening. Other safety question, will there be a tender boat and will we be flying a large dive flag during this session?
Yeah, so with your first question, this is why my idea was to try to keep it away from the boat launches, especially, you know, something like Juniper Beach that's used, you know, very frequently. We do have a fire lane in there specifically for us in the Juniper Beach, where we can at least park our boat trailer and our trucks away from there. But we're trying to avoid kind of, you know, messing someone's weekend up or week if they are fishing. I don't want to take up a whole boat ramp. But if, you know, that's the only feasibility of getting it done, obviously we want to notify people as best as possible prior to that happening. The dive flag, we always do any sort of training. We have dive flags with us. It depends on what, you know, how we dive. If we do it from boat, the boat typically has the flag up top. But if we do it from shore base, we typically have a dive flag kind of in the center of where we're diving. Any sort of training will always have a dive flag that's out there to notify people and to kind of stay away from us when we do dive. Obviously for, you know, real incidents, you know, sometimes that kind of goes by the wayside, but we always tend to have that dive flag with us.
Not concerned about an incident here, only about safety during training. Last question here. Will we have a oil boom just in case there is an issue on hand? Do we have that in our spill kit or anything available if we have an incident?
Yeah, so we don't have those as a dive team, but the fire department does. So we have access to any type of booms, anything to spill up oil or any other type of fluid. And we have those capabilities, and we will definitely have those on hand just in case, you know, we do start to see something coming out of that car.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I just have a couple questions.
Go ahead, Lisa.
So if you don't use the boat launch or the boat ramp, how do you intend to get the vehicle in the water itself?
So I believe it's going to be Fogarty that'll end up essentially, you know, rolling it into the water. But like I said, you know, we will end up, if we do have to use a boat launch, which, you know, with the reservoir, it'll typically be there. The other spot we do have kind of access to is that spot I alluded to before, that corner of Sailor's Lane. It is, you know, sturdy enough to park a tow truck on there to push a car out. But obviously we want to be as controlled as possible. We don't want to cause any damage. We don't want to do, you know, anything. If it does go to the boat launch, it'll most likely be dropped in with float bags attached to it at a boat launch and then moved with one of our boats to a deeper location.
Okay, so when do you think, do you intend to come back before the commission when you decide on an actual location? Or you just wanna
Yeah, I can come back
John?
with a more definite location for you guys. I don't plan on doing this drill if it does have the go ahead until June. So this is why I'm obviously trying to start, you know, early with you guys to kind of, you know, work out the logistics with it. So once we get a definite spot, you guys are okay with it, I'll come back to the commission and, you know, go over more details about it. This is more of a preliminary type, you know, go ahead to make sure that it's something that you guys would be open to. as opposed to specific details, which will come a little bit closer to the drill itself.
Okay, thank you. And if Sharon's joining, you might look at Massapog, right, John Thomas? Oh, actually, John, I know there were freshwater mussels mapped in, I thought it was the reservoir as well, no? Or am I thinking Winnicott?
You're thinking Winnicott,
Okay, there's none in the reservoir?
not that I know of.
Okay,
Oh, I think there are plenty. There, you can come on down. I'll show
are they mapped by natural heritage though?
I don't think so. So if they're not mussels, what are they then?
Aquatic species.
What's that?
Aquatic species.
Well, they're bivalve aquatic species, but anyway, we can talk about that at another time.
Yeah, I thought, because I figured if they were mapped, it just might be one area we want to avoid, that's all.
Yeah, there's no mapped natural heritage in the reservoir to my knowledge.
Okay.
Dan, you had a question.
Yeah, well, John's point, very well taken. You know, I'm just thinking of that nice space, sort of informal space on Bay Road, right next to Winnicott. It seems like it would be very easy just to drive a car in there, and well, you know, or
You're
whatever.
talking about
it is.
the Snake River with that boat launch?
I guess so.
There's
I mean,
actually
it's not,
two
it's
cars.
not far. It's
Yeah,
about
there's actually
midway
two cars
between-
that are underwater right there. Yeah.
Okay, well that takes care
Yeah,
care of that.
Yeah, there's two cars under there. The problem that we have with that is we have enough depth and everything, but there are currently two cars. I believe there was three and one was taken out. This is way before my time as a diver. And I know that there's a pretty significant current that goes through there, which is gonna kind of add a whole other factor to the training itself. That water coming out into the Snake River.
Well, maybe someone should put a sign up: "Do not drive your car into the into the body of water." Anyway, on a serious note, thank you for bringing this to us early, Joshua. Thank you.
All right, so I have a question for John. Assuming everything gets selected, what is the paperwork involved? Is this a request for determination? Is this an administrative decision? What do we do with this?
That's a good question. It's temporary fill, right? That's what the car would technically count as, right, Lisa? I mean,
I don't know.
how do we look at this?
So it's going to be probably there for what, a few hours?
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's not much different than a boat.
Can we put a repair plate on the car? Then it's no longer temporary fill or anything, it's just a registered vehicle.
Yeah, I guess I don't consider it a fill, John, because it's a structure, really. It's a temporary structure that's going to be sitting on the bottom for probably less than half a day.
All right. Well, I will reconvene with the commission once Josh and I have kind of selected an area, and we will make a decision then. But it seems like we will definitely have an understanding of what sort of paperwork needs to follow at that time. So I'm going to just kick this down a little bit. I need to do some research too. So.
Okay, and I'm just thinking it through. How we wouldn't even what would we condition, right? So once the disturbance is going to be, as soon as it goes in, they could dislodge sediment.
Well,
Okay.
here's the
That's
other
good.
question: is that do we want to make it so that way we give them an order of conditions to do these things on a certain period and time frame, and just come to us when they want to do these sort of activities, and do a notice
Do
of
you
intent?
intend to do it more than once?
Yeah. What's
think?
the?
Right now, we just have the one date. I don't have any intention on doing it again anytime, at least this year. But obviously, if this does turn out to be, a good drill, we get a lot of training out of it. Obviously, this is something to kind of think about doing yearly, but obviously we want to kind of go through do it once before we, do it multiple times.
Okay. I'm just thinking ahead, John, that how we couldn't even be able to condition it, right? Because once it comes back out, again, you're going to dislodge sediment in the water column. How deep?
But I
Feet. But you can't really condition it. So, I mean, I would seriously consider doing this administratively. So,
And, you know, with regard to sediment, the reservoir is kind of unusual in that it's so shallow in most areas. So when the wind really blows, all the sediment gets resuspended across the entire reservoir. So the reservoir turns brown. So I can't really say, and, you know, we knew that there was 2 feet of muck on the reservoir at one time because we had cores. And then the more recent studies show that that muck is pretty much gone now because it kept getting resuspended from all the wind and it goes over the dam. So we can hardly say that a little bit of sediment being suspended is different from the natural process in that particular body of water. So I don't know if we should be concerned about that.
yeah, no, I'm not, Julian. That's why I'm bringing it up. So the only thing I could think of that you would condition is sediment. Sediment's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's going to be immediately, you know, settled to the bottom, and we're good. So that's why I'm saying I don't think it will. I think that's the only potential effect, and that's why I think we can handle it administratively.
All right, we haven't opened it up the entire meeting, so if anyone has a question in the audience, you may want to just raise it now. And if there are none,
John? This is Deputy Chief Wilson from the Norton Fire Department. I just want to let everybody know that Josh has a full support from the upper management of the fire department. Myself and Chief Simmons were both divers years ago. I think this is great training. I think one of the things we can do is if anybody wants to come when we do the training and look at the vehicle before we put it into water, just to make sure that you can get your eyes on it, to make sure that there's nothing in there as far as fluids and things like that. We're confident that Fogarty's is going to take everything out of there that possibly could have fluid. We welcome that part of it. So he has our full support, and we'll do whatever the board wants us to do to make this happen.
So is the commission more understanding that administrative approval with me there, just making sure everything's okay? Does that seem sufficient?
to me it does. Any other comments?
Yeah, that seems, so that's like a second or a third check on it. So yeah, that seems
Okay.
like,
I mean, do you need a formal vote, John?
I mean, if there's no permit, then I would say that no, right?
Okay. All right, well, thank you, guys. Let us know when you're gonna be doing this, and, I can't see that it'll be an issue.
All right, we'll be in touch, guys.
All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
thank you.
All right, our next, item is, we have a request for continuation of the Mass DOT, file number the hearing for file number 250-1168 concerning the redesign of the intersection of 123 and, North and South Worcester Street. They have requested a continuation until February 24th.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Dan, seconded by Tama. Roll call vote, beginning with Joe, Dan, and Mark.
Aye.
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 And Paxton, Lisa, and Tama.
Aye.
Abstain.
Aye.
And I'll throw in an aye, the motion carries. Next up is any public inquiries or department updates. Don?
We have a couple new projects coming through. They'll be filing with conservation. They're going to be on the agenda for the 24th.
All right. So we're moving on to continue public hearings, and we pretty much wrapped this up. But I don't think there was any additional information. This is for file number 250-1172, 280 West Main Street, concerning a notice of intent to correct some problems at the site. So I don't think we have a representative here tonight. We just close the public hearing, and then we'll act on orders of conditions later. Is that your understanding, John?
That's correct. We were just waiting for a DEP number. I talked to DEP last week, so they were able to get that for us in this meeting tonight. So should be all set.
So unless there are any questions, we can consider a motion to close the hearing for file number 250-1172.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion by Thomas, seconded by Joe. Joe, Dan, and Mark. How do you vote?
Aye.
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 And Paxton, Lisa, and Tama.
Aye.
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 And I'll throw in an aye, so the motion carries. We're now in new public hearings, file number 250-1173, 0 South Washington Street. Do we have a representative of the applicant?
Yes, sir.
And I'm assuming you can share your screen for a,
Yes, I can indeed. Give me 1 second here. All right, folks, good evening. My name is Rick Frateroli. I'm a wetland scientist with Goddard Consulting, here on behalf of the applicant Dave Patuk for the site 0 South Washington Street. We have it here highlighted in red, South Washington Street coming down from the northwest side, 495 along here, and the line with Taunton just down to the southeast a bit. So right off the bat, we have for existing conditions, we have a wetland line shown here. See this stronger dashed line with the stippling inside. That wetland line was approved with an ORAD that's valid through, I believe, the end of October this year. We zoom in a bit. We have our 25-foot buffer zone shown, as well as our 100-foot wetland buffer shown through the site. We also do show a perennial stream on the USGS of the site. If you'll recall, I believe in October of 24, we were in front of you. We documented this stream dry outside of drought conditions to overcome that perennial presumption. So what that did was essentially opened up a little bit of wiggle room on the site for what might be allowable now that that is not considered a perennial stream and therefore does not have riverfront area. That determination was issued confirming that stream's intermittent status in the fall. We have a little bit of an interesting situation because this site is partially developed with an open order of conditions already. So we have what we're showing here is essentially the existing conditions from that previous filing. So we're sort of using the pre-existing conditions as our baseline here. And we'll note that wetland encompasses a large portion of the site, kind of starts up here in by the frontage on South Washington, arcs down, and even arcs back up with a little finger down here, as well as a small isolated vegetated wetland here in the center. So moving on to what we have proposed for the project. In general, the proposal is to construct this gravel laydown yard for the applicant's business. He's a few doors down, east down South Washington Street currently, and needs a little more space for the business, storing trench boxes, road plates, excavation accessories, these types of things. So we have essentially a gravel laydown yard through most of the usable area of the site. We do have a proposed building up here by the frontage as well. The intention with this is to really be a welding shop, so kind of a bare bones building, so to speak. We have a retaining wall that surrounds most of the proposed storage gravel area. That was done to kind of minimize the need for grading slopes out, and we can also sort of reduce erosion and runoff potential by doing that. We're also showing stormwater management. We've pulled 4 bays connected to a subsurface infiltration field. Going to do the heavy lifting for stormwater management on this one. We got a French drain up in the frontage over here. We are kind of clipping into your 25-foot buffer zone in a couple of areas. I want to draw that real quick. Blue hatched area is that 25-foot buffer zone. These couple of pink swaths through here are going to be permanent impact to that 25-foot buffer zone. So essentially above the retaining wall. That total is just over 2,700 square feet. We do have some minor temporary impacts to the buffer zone, to that 25-foot buffer as well. That's just under 2,700 square feet. That's for grading, just to get a more reasonable wall height, and that'll get stabilized, seeded, and planted afterwards. Standing that we are encroaching the buffer zone, we've proposed a couple of areas to go along with it. They're shown in green here. And essentially what we've done is we've pulled areas that are a little thin in the understory. So they have, a tree canopy for the most part, but there's really no shrub or sapling layer in these areas. So what we've done is we've gone ahead and spec'd out a smattering of native plantings to go in these areas to kind of bolster that buffer zone. I do want to draw attention to section up here. There is a concrete head wall that comes out from under the road here, presumably road drainage. And there is kind of a relatively unvegetated area between that outfall and the wetland itself. So we figured it might be a good opportunity to improve the capacity of the buffer zone there to provide some filtration of stormwater runoff and those types of things. That's essentially the overview of the project. Not too much going on here, relatively simple. So if there's any comments, questions, recommendations, I'm happy to entertain any of that.
Well, so this is yet another iteration of what has been proposed for this site.
Correct.
It appeared. But this is not really an amended notice or an amended order of conditions. There's already an existing order on this.
Correct. Yeah. So we had kind of coordinated with John on this topic. Amending the order was not really appropriate because it's a pretty marked increase in the limit of work. So amending that existing order wasn't really the right move here. We've gone ahead and filed this notice of intent before closing out the previous order of conditions because we wanted to, we didn't want to paint ourselves into a corner. If this proposal wasn't going to go anywhere, we still want to be able to move forward with the previously approved order. So as this process moves along, and if we look like we're moving in the right direction with the commission here, we will certainly be closing out that previous order.
All right, so I'm assuming there are going to be questions. And John, do you want to begin or?
I made some comments in my report to the commission, but I will let the commission members ask questions first on this one.
Okay, all right. So any questions from members of the commission?
I have several.
Okay.
So I want to go back to the site plan for a minute, and I really need you to focus on the distinction. So our 25-foot is not a buffer, it's a no disturbed zone.
Right.
So that's the
Right,
first thing
yeah.
you need to change on this plan, is that there's no wiggle room, it's a no disturb zone. Okay, that's the first question, or the first comment I have. And is any portion of the site in a flood zone?
No flood zone on the site.
Okay. Walk us through the wall height and what it's going to be made out of, how it's going to be constructed.
Yeah, absolutely. Wall height varies over its length. Up in this neighborhood, we have bottom elevation 81.5, top at 87. So 5.5 feet there. And we vary over its length. Is the 5.5 feet here, and then we come along. We propose some grading below the wall over here to temper that wall height a bit. We end up with 6 feet, and then we have in this location, then we start coming back down as we come up the eastern property boundary.
So basically you're encircling the entire site to fill it because it's too low.
Yeah, to install the stormwater system as designed, yeah, we need a little bit more elevation here, yes.
So where's the 25-foot no disturb?
It's this line here with the sort of hack mark through it. I think we might take a better look at it on this version. So it's on this diagram, it's the blue hatched area.
Okay, and what's the wall gonna be made out of? Do you have a detail? Are you showing detail? on the wall?
There will be a detail in the site plans. I'm not sure the material off the top of my head. Concrete block wall.
It's concrete, okay. So, okay. You really have to prove to us on a virgin site that's not developed why you need to go in on a 25-foot no disturb. And to me, just trying to shoehorn this in to fit it in is not a good enough reason. So you need to avoid it at all cost, which tells me you need to pull your walls in. And if you don't have enough room to operate, the site's not really meant to be developed in this way because you have to abide by the 25-foot no build. That's the first thing I'll say. And then the second thing is the gravel surface. So what type of equipment are you going to be operating on here? Because if you leave this as gravel, it could be constantly chewing it up. And you're going to end up washing some of those, during a rain event, you're going to actually end up washing some of those fines into the wetland. So is the gravel surface really conducive to the operation of equipment here, moving materials?
Yeah, I think that this is not at all uncommon for a type of yard like this to have that kind of gravel
I
surface.
didn't ask if it was common. My concern is it's going to lead to erosion. So you really want to have it paved because you're going to have equipment grinding down that surface constantly and leading to erosion and rutting. So is there any reason why it's not paved other than money, cost?
Well, the not paving it also kind of facilitates some of the stormwater management portions of the proposal. So the idea is that, well, we can go back up to that sheet as well. We also are having these full sediment forebays as well, with vegetation kind of interspersed, vegetated strip between, to connect to that underground stormwater system to collect a lot of that sediment, because it is understood that is something we have to anticipate here.
Okay, I still think it needs to be paved. You're gonna have equipment operating on it, and it needs to be paved. Let's also talk about the entry point where you mentioned that there was a culvert under there.
Sorry,
So is that culvert discharging flows onto the site towards the wetland?
yeah. So this is out from the catch basin here.
Okay,
Yes.
so that area, it looks like you're going to enhance it,
Yep. We're proposing plantings in that zone.
right? So there's probably a reason why that area maybe lacks topsoil or lacks vegetation, and it's because of the erosive flows there, is what that's telling me. So it might not be the ideal place to plant. There's a
Noted.
reason it lacks vegetation. So you don't want to go planting something that's going to get washed into the wetland. So I don't think that's a great location. And where is the access from the road?
Right in here is the access.
Oh, okay, it's really hard to see. Those are the only comments I have, and I'm not, I guess I'll go on record as saying is I'm opposed to any work in the 25-foot no disturb.
Other questions?
Just one quick question. Is this slab in the 25-foot zone too, of the proposed building? So
We just kind of barely clipped that edge right here.
And that building
So-
can't push forward out of that zone?
We can see if we can push it. I imagine it's cited as such because of a setback. If I had to guess, I don't know that distance off the top of my head. We can certainly explore that.
So,
Yeah, so we basically need to know that the site wouldn't work, or why you're in at 25. All you're doing is just saying we're in the 25. So the due diligence and the burden of proof is on you to say why you need to be in the 25. Right now, I'm not seeing it, except you want to put a 10-pound bag of crap on this site that's pretty small. To put it
Noted.
bluntly. Yep.
So fairly good sized building, 50 by 100. What is the activity that's proposed to go in there?
This isn't be a welding shop.
So it's basically a business that's going to be operated during normal business hours. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
So you had a label of a possible future.
Oh yeah, that's on one of the other sheets.
Yeah, well, I mean, it doesn't seem that possible is a word that relates. I mean, it's a business that's going to have some kind of facility associated with it, unless you want people just kind of peeing in the underbrush, which is probably not going to be acceptable. So I think the plans have to be revised to include the Board of Health opinion as to where a viable septic system is going to go. And that may well impact where your building can go as well.
Yeah, so the proposal with this is to have a rotating door of porta-john.
You're cutting out a little bit. I didn't understand that.
Sorry, the idea, at least at this time, is to just have porta-johns that are regularly serviced.
Okay. Other questions?
Okay, if we have porta-johns, which are a source of pollutants, we would have to know where those are. We would have to know about secondary containment. If that's going to be your primary method of disposal, we
Sure,
need to know
we
where
can-
those are.
We can get a location of that for you.
And I want to see secondary containment on those as well, please.
Does this building also have fire suppression? You said welding shop.
Yeah, it'll have all the required fire suppression. It's getting water and gas and electric.
So is there any drainage in the floor or catch system in the floor or
I'm
base material there at all?
I'm not sure if the interior has been spec'd to have drainage at this point. We are a roof runoff. I don't think there's any interior drainage to be routed to the stormwater system.
Well, there seem to be. I guess the first step is to open. If there are no further questions in the commission, although John, do you want to make comments now, or should I open it up to anyone in the meeting who might want to ask a question?
I think most of the comments that the members made this evening, I mean, I know for a fact this project's gonna have to go in front of planning board for a site plan review. And part of the pieces is for them to make their decision. They want to make sure the stormwater's done. But, obviously what I did tell the applicant and his consultant is that, this will require another peer review by the stormwater peer review consultant. So, if there are revisions to this plan, or we do anticipate revisions to this plan, those should be vetted out before we engage the peer review consultant to, prohibit any sort of additional cost that could be, part of this project for the applicant. So I guess the question that I would propose to the applicant is holding off on any potential peer review until this is at least gone in front of the commission and they're satisfied with the design, and then also in front of the planning board to make sure they're satisfied with the design as well. Because we don't want to have to keep going back and forth with the peer review just to make sure it meets the specifications from both boards.
Yeah, absolutely, John. We appreciate that and are definitely on board with that. I think we'll get a step or two down the road here before we pull the trigger on that.
Okay.
All right, so we need to open up any questions from anyone in the meeting, potentially about this project. And if there are not, we have some items that need to be considered for, in the continuation of this hearing, in particular, the issue of intrusions into the 25-foot no disturb and the other issues that John just raised. So, unless there's further discussion, we can consider a motion to continue, and I think our next meeting comes up on the
24th.
Now, it's my
24th, yes.
understanding, Chris, that you're gonna be in front of the planning board on the 25th. Is that correct? For this?
I'm
Or
not
no?
sure of that off the top of my head, to tell you the
Okay.
truth.
Okay.
I'll say, why don't we pencil it in for the 24th, and if we need to push it out again, if we decide that makes sense, I'll be in touch with you, John.
All right. Sounds good.
All right, that said, we can consider a motion for continuation till the 24th.
So moved.
Second,
So we have a motion by Dan, seconded by Lisa, Joe, Paxton, and Dan. How do you vote?
Aye.
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 And Mark, Lisa, and Tama, how do you vote?
Aye.
aye.
And I'll throw in an aye, so Chris will see you on the 24th, or thereafter, depends.
Thank you, folks. Have a good night.
You bet.
Thank you.
Next item is file number 250-1171, 260 South Washington Street. An NRAD verifying on-site resource areas. Do we have a representative of the applicant?
Yes. Hello?
Yes, so David Mackwell.
Good evening. My name is David Mackwell with Kelly Engineering Group, representing the applicant. Also present here at the meeting is John Rockwood with Ecotech, who did the wetland resource evaluation. So
one of you
how do
probably
I share my screen? I'm trying to figure that out here on this particular. There it is. Thank you. That just came up. We want to use this. Okay, can we see the screen now?
We can.
Yes.
Okay, great. So the hearing tonight is for abbreviated notice of resource area delineation and RAD for the property at 260 South Washington Street. The commission may remember, I don't know, a couple years ago that the landowner had another use on this as a billboard down in the corner over here. And that has been constructed, and that order of conditions is also either expired or about to expire. And we got a look at that file through the staff and realized they were really just focused in that one corner of the property. So we figured we would file a comprehensive ANRAD on the entire property. So wetlands on the property consist of bordering vegetated wetlands in the back over here with Route 24 here, industrial building at, I think it's 280 South Washington Street. I don't know the tenant, and I think this is a hotel here, maybe Extended Stay of America. We're in between those two sites.
Sorry, that's Route 495, right? Not 24.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah, it is.
495.
Just making sure.
I went around the corner already. Route 495 right here, identified BVW associated with an intermittent stream before the runoff goes over the highway. Another section of bordering vegetated wetlands here. Also identified in the front of the property, shown in yellow, is 3 isolated areas showing wetland vegetation. We had Ecotech go take a look at the property. Their recommendation was, got pretty definitive BVW out in the back. There's some isolated wetlands in the front. Need to check if there's any potential for isolated land subject to flooding. to move forward with this property, so we put together an ANRAD application, which consists of, this is a colored version of the same plan. The plan that's in your file is the black and white version. So we can always go back to that one if anybody wants to see it. So we put together just a report that includes all of the items that you need to have this stuff done, including John's report. We mentioned the fact that there is an order of conditions on the site. As this moves forward, we might help the other applicant close that out if we need to. I don't believe it's closed out yet. We have the standard forms. We got our DEP number, 250117 from DEP. All the checks were paid. We sent out the abutter notices. This is all the fun stuff. John's report's very comprehensive, starts, a few pages down on the on BBW. He's got his soil plots, all that fun stuff. Map showing we're not in the floodplain on this particular site. There's the USGS map. Run the stream stats on the roadway shoulder, intermittent stream. And this area of town is in the ACEC, I believe it's the Canoe River Aquifer in this particular area. And this whole area of town is in that. So associated with the application, we did, as John, our consultant, recommended, isolated land subject to flooding calculations for the low area depressions. We've done a quick stormwater analysis. What ILSF calcs, the first step is to determine if the watershed can generate a 1/4 acre foot of water. We took a look at all of those things. We've detailed it out in a little discussion. We showed all the depressions and the drainage areas around the isolated wetlands. We observed 3 isolated wetlands, but then we also observed there's kind of a flat area in the middle in between some of them. We checked that for ILSF as well. We did our hydraulic calculations for all of these areas. You'll note that to do them right, we actually consider the part that was identified as isolated wetlands as a paved surface or impervious surface, even though it's most likely not. The surrounding areas, we use the NRCS soils maps, which we included in the report. The areas are all group A soils here. We think this is a kind of maybe an old gravel borrow, which shows pits, Udithorns, gravelly complex there. So the runoff calculations for each individual check for ILSF calc generated essentially no runoff because we have very well drained soils here, and you run that for the 1-year storm. The way ILSF works, for anybody who doesn't know, is you determine the basin area itself. You run the 1-year storm. If it generates a 1/4 acre foot, you are ILSF if it can contain it, and then you run the 100-year storm, and the upper boundary of that 100-year storm within that drainage basin is the boundary of your isolated land subject to flooding. We did get just some minor comments from the staff this afternoon, and these are all the attachments associated with our report, including quoting the regulations from the Wetlands Protection Act. And John had said we might want to just show some spot grades on our drainage maps, which we did, and figured we'd just show them to you, but we didn't really know exactly what we want to do to better document this. So we figured we would show what we could do and have a discussion with the commission and move forward from there. I also stuck at the end of this. I didn't see that I emailed them over. Usually I do. That's the proof that we sent our abutter notices out the day that we filed. I put this at the end of our little presentation. So with that, we think we have a decent comprehensive application for consideration by the commission, and we have the team here to answer any questions and move forward.
So in
So
summary,
with that, I think, John, if you'd like to supplement that at all before I give it back through the chair, that would be great. If not, maybe just introduce yourself to the discussion.
John Rockwood from Ecotech. I'm a principal environmental scientist, and I'm a senior wetlands, professional wetland scientist. I delineated the site in December. There was no snow cover, the soils weren't frozen, it was actually good conditions to delineate. There's a pocket of bordering vegetated wetlands in the middle with a channel that drains to the east. And there's a channel along 495. Both of the channels are intermittent. There's a pocket of wetlands up in the northwestern corner of the site. And then there's the three isolated areas that were delineated based upon vegetation and hydrology. That pretty much sums it up.
So those three isolated areas are not regulated wetlands then?
They are not regulated under the Act unless they qualify as isolated land subject to flooding. Norton doesn't have a bylaw, so there's no jurisdiction under a bylaw. And those are the only things that count under this particular filing.
So it
John,
almost
since
looks
you-
like, again, maybe we're, just one quick comment. It almost looks like this area has been damaged by off-road vehicles. Is that the sense of seeing it on the ground as well? A lot of ATVs out there at one point.
It looks like there's some trails and other things, but it could have been, past work on the site. There's pits. There's
All right.
pits and mounds on the site. So it could have been.
We think it might have been a borrow area for some of maybe the construction of the highway or something at some point. We looked at some historic aerial photos, some of them which the whole area is cleared, maybe 10 or 20 years ago, something like that.
Okay. Lisa, go ahead, please.
I just had a question about, John, so you did the delineation in December. So you wouldn't have seen any evidence of vernal pools in those areas, so. I understand there's no PVPs mapped out there by the state or certifieds, but what is your gut feeling as to the viability of potential vernal pools out there?
Well,
doing it
vernal
out of
pools aren't a
season.
resource area under the Act. They're a type
Yes,
of
but-
wildlife habitat that occurs within resource areas or even in unregulated uplands. Any area that contains water in the spring has a possibility. I can't really
Right.
say,
So-
I really didn't, there was no water in any of them when I was there. And groundwater is certainly coming up, from December through January and February, groundwater is certainly coming up. And coming up soon, we're gonna start to get some rain, but if the soils are all type A, the water's gonna go into the ground pretty quickly. There was no real evidence of flooding within these things. John can comment on that from what he observed, because he was out there more recently. But there was no significant evidence of flooding. There was a little bit of ice cover in one of them. But other than that, there's no real evidence at this time.
So John Thomas, we might just want to put something in this ANRAD that maybe this has to be revisited in the spring to determine whether there are any vernal pools out there.
Yeah, I have already conveyed that to the applicant, that, for instance, we're outside vernal pool season, so I cannot confirm the presence of vernal pools on the property at this time. And we have done that in the past for other ANRADs where, they come in for a winter delineation and basically reserve the right or the applicant to evaluate that prior to the filing a notice of intent, or they can conservatively say that they think that it may be a potential vernal pool. And if they want to provide that supplemental information to us with the notice of intent, or during the process of that notice of intent to, establish that, yes, we did do a survey, we did evaluate this, and they can provide that information to us, then, that gives them that ability to say, okay, that looks like that can not be a factor in this. But, I think as of right now, these three isolated wetlands, based on the calculations and information that they've provided, do not look like they would constitute isolated land subject to flooding based on the data. And thank you for getting that spot shot data over to me. and the commission, because that shows that an actual field survey was done on the property. A lot of people have tried to just incorporate LiDAR imagery and call that good. Unfortunately, that's not usually good. So I appreciate you guys getting it over to us today.
So,
So I'm a little bit confused. So if we the commission can issue an ANRAD with a qualifier, basically? Is that what we're talking about?
Well, vernal pools aren't a resource area.
No, they're not, but they occur in one. So even if it's not subject to, okay, so for instance, if those don't qualify as ILSF and there's still a vernal pool in them, it still qualifies as a vernal pool under the water quality regulations.
Yeah, and
So-
that's another thing to bring up too, is water quality certificate potential. I mean, let's say you're coming in with a project for this and you're gonna fill all 3 of those isolated wetlands. You gotta make sure they're less than 5,000 square feet. So that's something to consider as well, because you still need to file a water quality cert for that. And since it's in an ACEC, I mean, we're talking NEPA thresholds and all the jazz. So just some things to consider moving forward with this project as you look at it.
Yeah, so David, it's undetermined. So in the spring, we would ask you to, or before you come before us again, is to check out those 3 isolated areas and the BVW to see if there's any vernal pool activity. We would just, in the ORAD, we would just say it's unconfirmed. It's unknown at this time whether they're.
I mean, the other thing here is that, it's a winter delineation. It's frowned upon by DEP to confirm wetlands in the winter time. And, it's outside the vernal pool season. So it's not like we can really verify anything. And I feel like we're doing the applicant a favor by, me going out there and doing a winter evaluation and saying that the flags look good. I mean, we could request, that a third party do the investigation if we don't feel confident. So, I mean, that's the other option too.
I was just trying to understand how it would work.
but you are expressing a degree of confidence that none of these areas will be vernal pools. So all it takes is, in another few weeks, confirming that they're not vernal pools, and a note can be added to the decision.
Yeah, there'd be a note in the ORAD that indicates that the site should be evaluated for the presence of, vernal pool biology and hydrology during the appropriate season. That's all that's necessary. It's pretty simple, pretty standard.
Yeah, and the season is coming where if there's an urgency of time with regard to what you're going to do with this site, I'm assuming that's what's underfoot here, that you can do that evaluation and submit new data, and that'll be done.
Well, I think that's great. I haven't heard of an ORAD like that, but it makes sense to me. And I appreciate
have, so
everybody's
this-
time and consideration of putting all the things out there and helping us vet the property. I think it's
I've
great.
certainly heard of that, so it's not
Yeah.
a real issue, no.
So John Thomas, are you comfortable with saying you're good with the delineation?
I mean, I guess I'm a little taken back by this one, because, I mean, what do you expect coming in for a winter delineation ANRAD? I mean, I guess that's my question. I'm not trying to.
We're not putting any pressure on anybody, and we don't expect an approval in one night, and we appreciate the discussion. So I don't want you to seem like we're taken back at all, because I'm not. And this is why we make the projects. This is why we meet with the professionals, and we're in the process. So
Yeah, I guess I
think
just,
we'd be, I think we're in, as it stands right now with everything that's been said, I think we're in great shape. And as you say, if we have vernal pools there, we have to get through that and anything else. As John Rockwood had said, we're trying to get our resource areas identified. And as the chair had mentioned, there's somebody looking at the property, and we're looking to move forward. And with vernal pool season coming up, it's probably not a big delay and could probably run concurrently if we are certain that there aren't any vernal pools there, and would prevent any future development of the front portion of the property. we would probably just continue on with our other things. We were looking to get, you know, a good feeling on this before we start the other portions of a development project. And I think we're there. So I think this has been very productive. I took some notes and I appreciate it. We did know about the ACEC. The water quality certificate was one that wasn't quite on my radar because I figured if we were to displace the isolated wetlands that were not jurisdictional, we have 3, and but I think it's a half an acre in an ACEC. We have to file with MEPA. And
So if you fill more than 5,000 square feet of isolated or bordering vegetated wetlands, that's one of the thresholds, to my understanding, for MEPA. And if you require a water quality certificate, that automatically triggers the need for MEPA review. So I would just make sure that, and I'm saying confidently that I've looked the site and I looked at those flags and I didn't want to change any of those flags based on my review. So just make sure that the area of those isolated wetlands is less than 5,000 square feet.
gotcha.
If that's less than 5,000 square feet, the next phase of this, whatever you're proposing, may go a lot easier than what you would want for any sort of potential development on this site. You know, and I mean, if you fill in all 3 of those wetlands and that's over 5,000 square feet, you've got a lot of work ahead of you, and you know, your consultant and your applicant need to really look at potential maybe alternatives to lessen any sort of potential impacts. And that's just me giving you some advice as you move forward with this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's an angle that I didn't, I always considered the 5,000 square feet as one, but we're all on the same property.
It's
They're
all
not very-
cumulative. Yep.
They're not very large though, so we'll keep going on those, and you know, we'll work with the commission. Obviously, if we do a development here, we're coming back anyway. We'll be doing buffer zone and everything else, obviously, and we'll need to work with the commission for any work that we have to do through MEPA, because I think if anything goes in here, we have to go to MEPA, by the way, to pay within the ACEC.
All right,
Any
so,
project other than a single family house in an ACEC
Yeah.
generally gets thrown into MEPA.
Right. I think
Only if you trigger a state
half an
permit.
acre.
Yeah.
You have to
Right.
trigger a state permit, right?
Yeah.
but
Yes, you have
let's,
to trigger a state permit.
Okay.
State permits, indirect
let me-
access permit we need. So
So
we
this-
flagged
This
MEPA.
is an ANRAD. We're not,
Okay.
we're
Yep.
not talking about development here.
Right,
So,
Understood.
Okay,
all right, so
understood.
I think we need to open this question up to any questions of anyone in the meeting have a question about this? And if not, it's my understanding that we have enough information to issue an ANRAD and we can potentially close this. Is that correct, John?
That is my understanding, if the commission is comfortable.
All right, so unless there are further questions or discussions, we can consider a motion on this hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing for file 250-1171.
Second.
I'll
We have
second.
we have a motion by Lisa, seconded by Joe. For closing the hearing on file number 250-171. So Dan, Lisa, and Joe, how do you vote?
Aye.
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 And Paxton, Mark, and I think Tom, I have to leave the meeting, so how do you guys vote?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'll vote aye, so the motion carries. So you have your to-do list with regard to those areas proving that truly isolated and not vernal pools, but at any rate, we'll be issuing an ORAD probably at our next meeting. So thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Appreciate the input.
Next up is a new hearing, file number 250-1143, 360 South Worcester Street, and so it's a request for amendment And as I recall, this was one very large building, and I guess that there's a proposal to change that. You can just refresh my memory and maybe share your screen to show us the plan.
Sure. Let me just pull my screen here. So, good evening, everyone. Michael Tator from Civil Environmental Consultants. I'm here on behalf of the applicant of Fregale Building Corporation. So, as many of you recall, we were before you last springtime for a notice of intent. At that time, it was a 35,000 square foot warehouse building. So, since that time, the landowners ultimately decided to sell the property. So we're working with the new purchaser for the property. So the new purchaser for Fregale Building Corporation is a contractor by trade. So this is going to be an expansion of their operations down to the South Coast. So in place of a 35,000 square foot building, they're looking for 3 smaller buildings, 2 buildings about 4,000 square feet, which are warehouse kind of garage space, and a 12,000 or 1,200 square foot office building. So, quick refresher for everyone: 360 South Worcester. We're right next to Thermo King, and beyond that is actually the Home Market Foods Distribution Center. So, the proposed project, as I mentioned, is the 3 buildings located within the same footprint of the previous development. So the dashed dot line around the perimeter is the previous limit of disturbance that was approved as part of the order or of the notice of intent. So all proposed work is staying within that notice of intent. The project's been designed with an asphalt area towards the front with about 16 passenger car spaces, and then a gravel area towards the rear of the buildings. That gravel is surrounded on the plans with a 12-inch berm to provide containment around the rear gravel storage area. So gravel in this case was used for infiltration purposes, but we included a 12-inch berm just to prevent any runoff from sediment going in towards wetlands. From a drainage perspective, this project generally aligns with the previous development. So maintaining similar drainage patterns, the site was split east-west. With this revised model, the drainage has been designed where we're meeting, in some cases exceeding, the previous performance standards on the project for all the stormwater regulations. So I know John has sent this out for peer review for stormwater, and we're waiting to get the results back on that one. With that, I'd open up to anyone, any questions.
All right. Well, it's my understanding that you've markedly reduced the stormwater requirements here. I mean, John, is that your overview?
So basically what they're doing is they're keeping the same limit of work, so that way they can come in for an amendment, and the footprint of the development is less than what they proposed originally. But the stormwater will need to be basically peer reviewed by peer review consultant to make sure that it is in compliance with the handbook and our local bylaw. So that's where we're currently standing. I mean, the limit of work, we already permitted this as the original limit of work. So what they're showing is less of a impact area overall from what was originally proposed, but we still need to make sure that we go through the procedures with the stormwater review.
Anyone have questions?
So, Michael, the area in the back that's gravel, is that going to be used for?
So it's contracting used for the property. So it'll be miscellaneous storage for the contractor. What he'll use back there, I don't have exact details of what he's going to be storing back there. mostly equipment or materials that he'd be using for his projects.
When
Okay,
you,
I think, John Thomas, it's something we should probably discuss as a commission at some point, you know, with these
We had
contractor
this-
yards.
Yeah,
and
we
the
had the same
operation of
situation,
equipment.
yeah.
Yep. And whether we're going to look to having these areas paved, because I'm just not seeing that the operation of equipment in gravel over time is successful. I just don't understand how it's gonna work. I don't understand how, if the soils are gonna become compacted, you're gonna have material popping up through the voids. It's gonna run off when it rains continuously. So I'm just not seeing how that's helpful to the wetlands at this point on any site. So I think we need to discuss this as a commission. The last proposal, did it also include the gravel in the back?
The one at, the one on, Hill Street. So the one
No,
you're
I
talking
mean,
about?
this same project, sorry, the same layout.
No, they had,
Okay,
a parking and building, I believe. The building was more centralized.
okay.
Correct. And from purpose of stormwater, in terms of the infiltration and everything with runoff, we did model conservatively as the gravel as impervious area. So we did take that into account into our analysis, and providing that 12-inch perimeter burn was intended to help contain any runoff from sediment on the site.
So I still think it's something we need to discuss as a commission and maybe even or with DEP at some point, because we're seeing this over and over again. And I'm just not I'm just not convinced it's gonna work over the long term.
You're talking like maintenance nightmare, right?
Yep.
Scenario?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm talking about voids becoming compacted. So it's great that you're gonna have infiltration, but then what happens when if there's equipment out there and there's the operation of equipment, soils become compacted, and therefore you don't have that porosity anymore. And so what happens then?
Yeah,
That's
so
when starts to run off. So we can't really leave it up to the owner at some point to, refresh that gravel, because we know that's not realistic. So that's the issue I'm having with having these gravel areas over and over again with the operation of equipment on them.
yeah, and I'm speaking to this gravel area. We've pitched these 2 deep sump catch basins that go through water quality to help address some of those issues. But we are intending for this to be impervious area. We're not planning for voids runoff to count for infiltration on this in our modeling.
Right. So what you're telling me is you're going to capture and treat. That's great. But what happens to the underlying material over a few years? That's what my concern is. I understand that you're going to capture and treat it. You're treating it as impervious. You're accounting for it in your calculation for storage, all that good stuff that has to happen. But I'm talking about the integrity of the ground surface after a few years.
Yeah, the first time a plow goes through here, if there's materials in the winter, all that material is gonna be displaced.
And then redressed in the spring, probably with new material. I mean, you gotta, like, I see your point, Lisa, and that's the challenge with, storage yards like this, is that, we're not thinking long-term, 20, 30 years from now, what potentially could be.
And that's why I think they all have to be paved, John. That's why they all usually are paved. so that it can be maintained. And nobody wants to pave them because they don't want to. It's called the cost of doing business. It's called the cost of development, and nobody wants to do it. And it's really the only reason why they don't want to do it. It's the cost. But that shouldn't be, of course it is, but it shouldn't be our issue. It shouldn't be a potential issue with degradation to that resource area over time because somebody doesn't want to pay to have something paved.
is this primarily a landscaping contractor or it's unknown?
They also do some civil contracting work. So he works in landscaping. He also does some civil contracting.
Yeah, which means heavy equipment, right?
There could be.
And Julian, we can't, this person could just build it to spec and then sell it or lease it out to somebody else. We can't take a guess on who's going to use this and what they're going to use it for. Right now, we know that there's going to be storage and there's going to be equipment operation out there. So I
Yeah,
am, for one,
I-
going on the record as saying that I think this needs to be paved.
I agree with you that a gravel surface is great as long as you don't use it very much. But this is, if it's any kind of volume business, it's going to have a lot of traffic. So this still has to go out to be peer reviewed.
Yeah,
So,
it does.
we definitely have to continue this. And I don't know if we open this up to the whole meeting for questions. But if there is a question, raise it now. Otherwise, we can consider a motion for continuation. Michael, I think you're gonna have to raise that issue of the lack of effective durability of this gravel surface for this kind of business activity.
Absolutely, we can have those conversations with the client.
I mean, it's not gonna change the stormwater, design if you calculated everything as impervious, right, Michael?
Correct.
Yeah, so it's just a topic of discussion for material being represented at that location.
As a follow-up to that, are there provisions for snow storage here?
Yes, there is snow storage identified on the site layout around the perimeter. So these dashed out lines around the perimeter. So-
What about in the back, though?
It'd be provided either just over the top of the gravel berm.
So you have an enormous area in the back. Where are you gonna plow that snow? I mean, the area in the back is bigger than the front, yet you have more snow storage in the front, which is kind of counterintuitive, but.
Absolutely. If the commission would like, we can provide calculation for the snow storage around the site.
I think there needs to be more in the back. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, so unless there are further discussion or questions, we can consider a motion for continuation of the hearing for file number 250-1143.
I'll make
So
that
moved.
motion.
So Dan, I think you made the motion and we need a second.
Second.
Seconded by Lisa. So Dan, Paxton, and Mark, how do you vote?
Aye.
Aye.
And Lisa and Joe.
Aye.
Aye.
And I'll throw in an aye. So, Michael, we'll see you on the 24th.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Michael.
So there are no requests for COCs or extensions. We do have an order of conditions for file number 250-1172, which is the King Barbershop remedy for an unfortunate violation. A lot more yellow than usual.
Yeah,
A is describing the disturbance. 4 is noting that this is an action related to an enforcement order. 5, it authorizes restoration. 6 notes oversight will be needed, and 7 is requirement for monitoring reports. And then we had 31 is also the delineation of the monitoring report. 32 notes requirement for visual barrier. So, I guess the question I have is, in the headline, it labels this as attachment A. Do we generally have attachments?
Yeah, so
What-
it goes, it goes as an attachment, and this is considered attachment A because when you issue conditions, it says enter attachment, so I could call it just attachment 1, but attachment A seems more appropriate.
So it's just that I had never observed that before, and this is the first time, or have you used that before?
It's not just me. I mean, this is from going all the way back when Jennifer was here. She put it as attachment A as well, so.
Okay.
I guess you learn something new every day, right?
Yeah, I was asleep for a long time. Any questions?
Lisa, any questions?
John, yeah, what's the difference between 7 and 31? Are they the same?
731?
Yeah,
I guess, yeah. I guess 31 is the same. So I guess I can,
mean-
one's a condition, one's a finding,
Right.
but I could just remove it because it's a condition. I thought it would be appropriate to put it up there too, so that way they know
Okay.
they need to do it because I know it's duplicative, but
okay,
it being that, for instance, this the first sheet you see when you open it. Since they don't know, I'd rather it be right in front of them on the
Okay.
first page. So I just
so
put
maybe
it there.
just say, reference condition 31 or something,
Yeah,
because it's
I
a
can
little
say that.
fuller. Yeah, okay,
And
Yep.
and their copy won't be in yellow, is that right?
No, none of the stuff we issue is in yellow, just so we know.
Yeah, no, but I think in this particular order, having it right up front seems to be needed.
That
Okay.
way there's no I guess discrepancy.
Further discussion? If not, we can consider a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept heck is this? Oh, is this an order?
Is an order of conditions for,
So I'll read for a second. An order for file 250-1172 as discussed.
Second.
we have a motion by Lisa, seconded by Paxton. So Dan, Mark, and Lisa, how do you vote?
Aye.
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 And Paxton and Joe, how do you vote?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'll throw in an aye, motion carries, and I think that brings us to the end.
Yep.
Oh, one more item. I will not be here for the 24th. Unless I can do it from Tahiti. Oh,
So
I
I
was-
guess the
I was
question is,
thinking-
Lisa, will you be here the 24th? Okay.
Oh, I just
Alright, Lisa's-
unmuted myself. Yes, I will be.
Okay, good. So Lisa will be the honorary chair on the 24th.
Mhm.
And Dan, you can be the fill-in vice chair. How's that sound?
Okay.
All right.
As long as Lisa's here, it's no problem.
Okay. Excellent. All right. Well, if anybody has anything else, Dan, did you have anything?
No, I was just going to say, even if Lisa isn't here, I will try my best to rise to the occasion.
You can drive
Okay.
the bus down. Yeah.
There's going to be no preamble moving forward. So, the other thing I wanted to bring up was I was going to put this on the next agenda, but the governor hasn't released whether we can continue doing Zoom meetings yet, but I'm hoping they release it sooner rather than later. I know that there's probably a lot of stuff going over with the state going on right now. So, but it's till March 31st, 2025. I think we have maybe 2 or 3 more meetings till we have to go back in person. So if we don't hear anything, I'm hoping we hear something sooner rather than later so that we can continue doing Zoom meetings. Otherwise, we have to meet in person, which is not a bad thing. I'm just saying that, just so everybody's aware.
So can I ask, why are we doing away with the preamble?
Because it's the same old, and everybody kind of knows that we're doing Zoom meetings and that
Oh, okay,
you have permission to do Zoom meetings through legislation suspending that requirement of the open meeting law. And it's like, how many times do we need to read that?
okay.
See, Julian's trying to shave off 5 minutes, so that's what he's trying to do. So in
Yeah,
his
well,
efforts,
honestly,
Well,
I have
let's,
not been to
No.
another commission that reads that.
well, okay, so why do you want us to keep reading it?
Well, I don't know, I said, he's doing his thing, I don't know, I've never been to another hearing where someone's read that thing, but. Anyway,
Well,
we should have shared that
anyone-
months ago.
if anyone misses it, I'll be happy to declaim from famous environmentalists, John Muir or somebody like that, or in nature is preservation of the world, something like that.
All right, well, just Dan, at the next meeting, if I prompt you to say it, just remind me that you don't have to, okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think there's a tremendous amount of performance art going on right now, and maybe we can just get rid of some of our performance art or do it in private. So, all right.
All right. Thank you.
all right, thank you, everybody.
Stay
Good
warm,
night.
everyone.
All right.
Good night.